So I'm going to call the select board meeting to order at 8:01 on June the 6th, 2024. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Chris. Welcome, Bernie.
Morning.
Okay, so we have a one topic agenda this morning. There is no public comments. We're going to jump right into it. So we are interviewing Chris Lund for the vacant building inspector job in Southborough. We have, there's already been a group of people that have interviewed Chris. Chris has come to us through Bernie, which is what we had hoped. Everybody has seen the resume, I assume. We've got 13 questions. We're going to ask the questions in the order of how we sit at our meetings, except for the last three. And then I'm going to reverse the order, and that's going to be Al, Marguerite, Sam. So three of you have three questions, and two of us have two questions.
Hold on, I got to find my questions.
Okay. So it's on an email from Vanessa, Al, from last night.
All right.
You're number 5, Al, so you got a little time.
All right.
Well, let's let him get him so that he can hear what the other ones say too. So Chris, thank you for doing this. I know, being interviewed in public is a little awkward sometimes, but that's how this world works.
I have, oh, here we go. Yep, got him.
You got him?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's just jump into this. Okay, Chris, so I'm going to start. We would like to start the process with you telling us a little bit about yourself and why the Southborough Building Department is a good professional fit for you at this moment.
And you're muted, Chris. Is that better?
Much
Perfect.
better.
Everybody hear me? All right. Thanks, everyone. And a little bit about me and why I'm a good fit for Southborough. So I'm a carpenter's kid, basically. My dad got out of the service in 72 and went right into carpentry, and I grew up in that world. And born and raised in Shrewsbury. I got a couple of boys. One just graduated Endicott. The other one's at UMass Amherst, and been married 29 years this October. So things I like to do in my free time, avid golfer, motorcycling, hiking, those kinds of things. So that's a little bit about me and my background. And what's really attracted me to Southborough is that the character of the town. When I worked with my dad growing up through construction, we did projects in Southborough amongst other towns locally. And it's a quaint, lovely little community. And so that's really what's drawn me to the position. And then from a personal standpoint in my life, my wife is the major breadwinner in our family. And the last few years, I've been fortunate enough to be a part-time stay-at-home dad, as well as work for Northborough. And that time's, like I said, with my son graduating from Endicott, has come to an end. I don't need to do that anymore. And so I'm really looking to set roots and establish with the building department in Southborough full-time, moving right on into the future.
Okay, good answer. Andrew?
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
I'm Andrew Dennington, the vice chair. How would you describe your style as a building commissioner and zoning enforcement officer?
So my style tends to be one where we basically any type of situation we're into, whether it's building code or zoning, we're well documented. I like pictures with anything I do, and we take a role where we allow the facts and evidence of whatever the situation is to kind of take charge of where a decision's going. And then with enforcement of that, we take I tend to take a role where we take it one step at a time, and it's mutual enforcement with whoever we're talking to as well as us, meaning I'm not here to push something over somebody. It's really, we take the legal and regular steps through a process, and we let that enforcement come as it would naturally with the folks that we're dealing with. So I don't know if that makes sense to folks. I'll try to give an example. If somebody's doing the project at home and they didn't pull a permit and we see trucks and dumpsters out front, my policy is basic. I don't go looking for trouble per se. I'm not hunting down cul-de-sacs and looking for dumpsters, but if you're on my route and you're right next to where I do have an inspection scheduled, there's a moral obligation as an inspector to chat with folks. And so we come up to the door, say hi, hey, what do we have going on there? And if there's an invite or they want me to help them, then we keep proceeding. If it's, hey, I'm uncomfortable, whatever, no problem. You step away, step back, we can document and draft things and then just take it one step at a time from there. We don't have to take any kind of a position where we're forcing or looking like we're acting like a hammer out there in the community. I don't think that does anyone any good.
Thank you.
Sam?
Good morning, Chris. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Sam. Good morning.
Thank you. I appreciate your background comments. I now understand why Southborough is attractive because we have a town golf course, as a matter of fact.
Yes. Never played it.
Sadly, employees don't get a discount, but it's a wonderful little course. I'd ask you to share a professional experience you've had with a difficult property owner regarding zoning enforcement that you encountered. Talk us through how you handled it. What was the outcome? And if you could go back and do it over, would you change anything?
So an example of a zoning enforcement item, it tends, a lot of the stuff we see is accessory structures or something along that line, and it's a setback issue. And so one of the things that I've run into is in a tight-knit neighborhood, there's a lot of folks that have been there for a long time, and then somebody new comes into the neighborhood. Maybe they go ahead and bring in a shed or something that's close to the line. In this particular case, that's kind of what happened. And the neighbor in particular was wanted that shed moved. And so basically I started the process by just understanding, hey, the neighbor that's going to complain, we don't just look at the new person coming into the neighborhood. We're going to, how is everybody's sheds in that area? And we use that as kind of a litmus test on how far we're pushing things. Because, putting all the eyes on the new person coming in the neighborhood, I don't think is mutual, all that fair. If it's something that, everybody's got a little bit of an issue going on in that spot. And so we then talk to everybody and kind of get a sense of where they're at with it. Can the shed be moved? We try to take a soft approach and talk to them about, can you move it? The neighbor that's complaining, what's the story? And sometimes it reveals itself to be slightly different. But in this particular case, it wasn't a problem to shift the shed over, and they did it, and it kind of calmed things down in that neighborhood. The person that was a bit offended that it was established, I think had a bit of a respect for the established neighborhoods, sheds and fences and everything, and that, hey, we're all on, trying to get along in that spot. So that outcome ended up being a good one in that we didn't have to take it to any large extent with any kind of legalities. Looking back at it, that the approach seemed to be a fair one, and everybody in the end got what they wanted. So I didn't have, that's my experience as an example for you, Sam.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Marguerite?
Hi, Good morning. I'm Marguerite Landry, and here's my question for you.
Yeah.
Customer service is a priority for the town of Southborough. How do you practice that philosophy and ensure that others in your office do likewise? Southborough has several large institutions. That would be St. Mark's, Face School, the New England Center, Harvard Booker, that create some demands on the building department for construction projects, annual inspections, and occupancy permits. Please describe any related experiences.
Sure. So customer service to me is we have those folks that come into the office, they're at the counter, they're looking, they might have been unannounced or a surprise. I do think a couple minutes of your time immediately takes things a long way. I'm not a big fan of a situation where the building commissioner is insulated in an office and everything's got to go through a process before it gets to him. Even if it's 2 minutes to just say, hey, let's set up a meeting, and I can give you the attention you're looking for. I think that de-escalates or takes care of a lot of things and helps folks feel like they're moving the ball forward on whatever their situation is. And then with regards to Face School or St. Mark's annual inspections, my history with the public schools in Northborough and places of assembly and whatnot, if they're used to going through annual inspection, they've probably got a pretty darn good situation going already. So the walkthrough, and sometimes is joint with the fire department when we do those, but the walkthroughs largely are cursory, get an understanding of what's going on, and just make sure that there hasn't been a dramatic change from one year to the next on I don't know, flammable stuff in a stairwell or clutter or an egress door that's no longer working. But again, I find it largely best to be, you do the walkthrough. If they've hit most of their marks on something, we have a little thing to address. You go, hey, look, we're going to track it next year where we anticipate that item to be addressed. We'll see you next year. And you move forward in that regard.
Chris, could I add on to that just a little bit? You have one of these organizations, and they've done new construction, and the new construction is violating a town bylaw, and it will involve a fair amount of cash to fix it. How do you approach that?
So you have new construction that somehow through permitting is what you're saying.
Correct. This is an actual event.
Okay. So they ignored
or it was overlooked or something.
Okay. All right. So basically all the stakeholders have to get together on a situation like that, discuss what the condition is that's in violation, and then proceed from there. If they're unwilling to address that item, then you have basically and I'd be working with Gene Novak too. He's a trusted resource in the department already, gained some insights. But with that, we then have to basically draft up an enforcement. And then if it's something that they don't want to comply with, then we bring it to the select board to see if that's something that you folks want to pursue.
Yeah, I know I'm going off question here, but we actually have had problems where, say, a homeowner has violated bylaws, and it's a hassle. So I'd like to know anyway what your and they don't want to cooperate. How do you proceed on that?
Yes. So you draft up the enforcement order, and basically it's a letter campaign, and then if they don't want to comply, then we have to go to the select board to request a court injunction to force that compliance. I know just had a seminar with Jay Tallerman on this actually, and I understand he's the town attorney. Jay's not a huge fan of ticketing. Ticketing tends to be a process that doesn't really force someone's hand. The only way you actually get compliance with the zoning is that we get Jay involved if you folks requested it, and then you draft up a court injunction, and that's when you go after the issue at hand with the town resident.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Chris, let me just interject another question real quick. Why did you deal with Jay Tellerman? What was the cause of that?
Sure. Jay is a regular speaker at Symboa, their spring 2-day workshop they have. Symboa is the Southeastern Mass Building Officials Association. So they just had their 2-day conference down in Mansfield. And Jay always takes on a zoning topic for a few hours of one of those 2 days. And actually, he's been, him and Bobrowski, been a lot of fun to listen to over the last few years.
Yeah, no, he's been our town council for a couple of years, and we like him a lot, his whole firm.
Yeah.
Okay, so Al, can you do question 4?
Question 4.
Uh-huh.
Oh, in this position, you'll supervise about 9 employees and contractors. Describe in some detail your management style. How would you make sure everyone in your organization knows what is expected of them?
Sure. So to start right off, I have to understand how they're operating now, and get a sense of, what's a day in the life of the building department look like, a week in the life, understand how we're doing inspections. Is it people can call up and get particular times, or do we have scheduled hours, those kinds of things. And then from there, once I have a sense of how the Kelly's being utilized, Gene and myself and so forth, getting into a management style, I like to think everybody's professional at what they do. And that's my first assumption when I have folks that I'm working with, and that they're conducting themselves at the best of their abilities. And if they're veteran folks in their positions, they know what they're doing. So I don't have a sense of needing to oversee or micromanage every little bit of what they do. And then from there, I do, with the systems that your town utilizes, OpenGov is the permitting system that I'm very familiar with. There's queues, there's metrics to make sure that we're responding to folks permitting, inspection-wise, in a timely fashion. And I make sure that I'm hitting my cues in trying to set an example for the folks under me, and that's something that we all want to do. And if somebody's falling a bit behind, you get involved a little bit and go, what's going on? What do we need there? And try to support them. Everything starts from an education standpoint of talking to somebody about, what our best practices are, what we can do differently, and how can we support their efforts to do better at what they're doing and move forward from there. It tends to be how I operate. I like to be collaborative. I don't like to just make decisions in a vacuum. I think it's a team effort, we're trying to help each other out in that department as best we can. So that's how I approach things.
Okay, Chris, my next question, you started answering it with Al's answer, so you've already answered part of it, but let me just do it again. What experience do you have with online permitting and the GIS system that we use? Yeah,
so OpenGov is a system that I first got introduced to in Shrewsbury. They implemented it when I was there, and then Northborough has had 2 versions of OpenGov. A previous version, and that was more worked on the servers within town. OpenGov is a cloud-based. OpenGov, in both cases, Shrewsbury and Northborough, I actually helped design the applications and got involved in how to change the forms and workflows. And I'm still an administrator of OpenGov for Northborough, meaning I go into the back door of that program and I can alter applications or change questions, tweak it, and I'm very, very comfortable with that. We can also produce reports monthly by person, different ways you can do the reports to see how your things are tracking in that regard. I also like to use OpenGov on the iPad out in the field. I've been a great tool when you're conducting inspections in performing those. The photographs that you take and upload at inspections do speak volumes. Then with GIS, it's the same thing. We have GIS mapping for Northborough. I use the measuring tools. We can use different switch on, wetland stuff, utility stuff. We got aerial photography history, I think in Northborough back to 2008. So you can use those tools to kind of understand when something's occurred in the history of a house and get a sense of what's going on or what's available to them. Septic systems, sewer. I understand Southborough is all septic, but it's those kinds of things to get a good sense of what's going on with the property. Never mind permitting history. Through GIS, you can get into the property records and pull up the assessor property record and see what a permitting history is on a house. Again, that kind of the reason I bring all that up too is largely before you step foot on a property that you weren't invited to for an inspection, you want to get a sense of out in the field, on the road, what have I pursued all the avenues of, is there a permit or am I missing something? Or was this covered before you go introducing yourself to a front door and talking to somebody unannounced over an issue or something? And that goes for zoning too. You can see changes to property. The aerial photography is phenomenal these days to understand, in basics, when something changed, accessory structure got added, or there's more cars, or a truck being parked, or a container. Those kinds of things kind of give you a lot of evidence and tools to use at your disposal.
Okay, good answer, Chris. I'm convinced. Okay, second part of that question is there any other technology tools that you like to use that maybe we don't have here that you've used in your past jobs?
No, beyond that, it's the basic stuff. The Microsoft Outlook suite in Adobe Acrobat, the whole, again, the editable version of that to draft up orders and whatnot, and work with a lot of plans now. All the plans are digital. And so our ability to mark those plans up and re-upload our marked versions into the permitting system for the client to use. Like, hey, keep moving with your project, but we got some things we want to make sure you're paying attention to before I come out for inspection. It's those kinds of things. Didn't really need any other kind of proprietary software or anything different than what you have already, from what I understand.
We've got Office 365, so you're all set there, and I think Adobe we should if we don't. So good, check on that one. All right, Andrew.
Muted, Andrew,
Andrew.
but very articulate.
Thanks. Yeah. Sorry about that. What are your thoughts on professional development and how do you stay current with changes in codes?
Sure. So professional development, of course, it's mandatory in some regards. We have the CEUs that we have to continue getting those education units to keep our licensing. So in order to do that, I attend district meetings for our area on a monthly basis. And then, like I'd mentioned earlier, the Symboa workshop, the 2-day workshop, that's actually, you can get a significant amount of CEUs at that. And it puts us face to face with current situations. Jay brings up real active current court stuff going on. And this year we're facing a code change. 10th edition of the state building code looks like it's coming into effect in January. So there's a lot of stuff going on about what we already know is going to be changed or forthcoming with that. So we're getting presented with those changes, and then we have an energy code change occurring again in July. So all that, so big proponent of keeping up to date with all that stuff. And so through the district meetings, the Symboa meeting in the spring, UMass has one in the fall that I'd like to attend at some point. Those are the real ways to, I forget too, but Mass Save, because of the energy stuff, they have an education arm. So we regularly attend webinars on that on a monthly basis as well.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Sam? Sam, we can hear you, but you're garbled.
Yeah. Now you're having the problem with this.
Yeah, that's right. But I was
There you are. You're fine now.
Okay.
Quick comment, not for discussion. I was interested in your enforcement comments. I think we've been lax on enforcement. We've had building inspectors, zoning officers who didn't really seem to view their job as enforcement. And I think there's some things out there we need to catch up on. It's my personal view. My question is, what experience have you had in budget creation and budget management, which is obviously one of the key parts in terms of department management?
Yeah. So budget management, definitely been involved in it from being the building commissioner in West Boylston years back, and been very fortunate with working with Bob Federico in Northborough. We both came into the profession at the same time. Bob knew why I was coming into the Northborough Building Department, and with us both having our building commissioner licenses, he really treated me like a partner, which was just awesome. And the building department budgets are not super complicated. The vast majority of it is salary. And then we get into, the professional development memberships to your, or local district, some clothing stuff, some book purchases. It's those kinds of things. So there's really nothing super involved there. Definitely you want to track it on a quarterly basis, make sure that you're not getting out of hand in some area. That mostly happens with contracted services plus in salary, and just paying attention to how those are tracking. And you also have to be aware of the fact that what we do is seasonal to an extent. The dead of winter, that for sure, January, February, if there is some sort of item like contracted services, you don't need it as much as you do in the summer and so forth. So those things are pretty basic, but it's definitely something that I've been in tune with through my career.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marguerite, question 9.
Okay, this is question 9, but as Sam said, and I would like to reiterate, we have been having issues with enforcement of bylaws big
Okay.
time. So that if you want to speak to that later, but I have to ask my question. Have you needed to present to a select board, finance committee, or town meeting on any issues? And please describe your level of comfort with public speaking.
Sure. I have not had to answer to a select board directly or at a town meeting over an item to answer that part of your question. Public speaking, I guess what I'd speak to on that is I was an active member of the Builders Association back when I was doing construction with my dad, and actually was president for 3 years. And I had to run the meetings during that time period. The initial term was 2 years, but they didn't have somebody stepping in. So I actually filled a 3rd year. And I had topics to talk about at those meetings. So that was a large part of speaking in front of groups. Regularly, those meetings, the folks, it was 100 builders to as much as 200 or 300 in its heyday. From there, dealing with the public in town, I have no problem. Hopefully you can gain that by how we're talking this morning, meeting with the group, going through things. The other example I'd have is in West Boylston at the time, we had a 40B project coming in. So the town residents near the 40B had a lot of concerns. So I'd conducted actually a meeting at the meeting board room off hours to meet with those folks and go over the project and hash out whatever items that they had, as well as kind of quell some items that they had misconstrued, because 40Bs are kind of complicated. So that was another time when, as you folks are well aware of, I know. So that was another time where, you know, we had a discussion with a large group. It's slides, it's PowerPoint slides and talking points, and you know, you have to go in prepared, obviously, and know where you're going to kind of move the room through to, and so that's kind of the discussions that we had.
Great. Al, you've got the next one, number 10.
What advantages do you see in having an open and collaborative relationship with other departments, heads, and outside agencies? And how do you improve the level of collaboration within your department, internally and externally?
For sure, the benefit of being collaborative and open with other departments is information. Case in point, I just had a house. They applied for exterior permitting, siding, roofing, windows. And lo and behold, they'd done a whole bunch of interior renovation, and they got found out through their wiring and plumbing permits. So one of the things I regularly do is I went right over to the assessor's office. I'm aware that sometimes if they do get an internal inspection, they might have photographs. We discuss the codes that we see them use in their cards for an enclosed porch versus a 3-season porch versus open porch, those kinds of things. So getting the assessor department involved in talking with them about something before we move forward into enforcement is huge. Town planning, town engineer, when it comes to lands items like wetlands or conservation stuff, DPW with curb cuts, and if there's stuff like groundwater protection overlays, wells that we need to protect. Sign-offs for massive demo projects, you got to go through your department heads. Fire department, of course, is a huge stakeholder in that process. So being collaborative in that regard, it's all about gathering the right information, make sure you're going to make a correct decision, and you have buy-in from multiple departments. You're not just doing it on your own. And those type of meetings are always promoted amongst anyone on the staff.
So Chris, let me interject something here that I think would be helpful as far as you understanding. So you're going to be in a building that's going to house a lot of really great people. You've got senior center, you've got the health department, you've got the building department, you have got ZBA, and you've got conservation. Where you're going to be specifically, you're going to have conservation, ZBA. You have got really, really top-notch people you're going to work with either directly or indirectly. Our conservation agent is fantastic. And the ladies that work in that department now, Kelly and Laura, are just great. And then, of course, you've got Gene Novak, who we all know and has, you know, his statewide excellent reputation. So you're walking into a really, really good situation as far as the camaraderie and the expertise and the quality of people down there. And John Parent, building department, who's down there with you, he's fantastic too. So you've got a great group of people. The DPW superintendent is, he's about to complete his first year, which is amazing. That's gone by this fast. He is really good. He's about to have an engineer for the first time starting soon. July 1st, it's budgeted. So that's in the process. Our planning board is very robust. You've got 5 really good members there, and you've got 2 people on their staff. So you've got a lot of really, really good people you're going to work with. And I think you're going to be happy to do that if this goes forward.
I'm going to be leaning on them pretty heavy over those first few weeks, that's for sure.
Yep. No, I think you're going to be really pleased when you see those if this goes forward. Okay, Al, you've got the next one too, number 11.
If we were reading your last performance review, how would your boss describe you? What kind of professional goals would we see there?
So last performance review, proud to say it was a 5 out of 5. Full disclosure there. Detail oriented, professional at the counter. I follow something all the way through, is kind of the gist of how Bob viewed me, from as best I can tell, my understanding, talking with him and everything, and the reports we'd get. A lot of trust to make the right decision and know that I could support it with fact. So that's where I go with everything. I'm hold it accountable, that item, address it, and see it all the way through, is my strategy. And that's what Bob recognized in my performance reviews working with him.
Great. Okay, Marguerite, number 12.
Alrighty. Tell us something about yourself that we cannot learn from your resume.
Something that you cannot learn from so 2 years ago, I hiked 65 miles of the Long Trail, and as an old overweight guy, I had hoped to go further, but it didn't go quite. It was hard. It was super hard. And so that's something you wouldn't have known from my resume. I got a couple tattoos, but I'm not going to show you those either. But yeah, that's my story. It was quite an experience. It lasted 7 days. I ended up coming off trail with some pretty decent feet issues from all that hiking. What an experience, though. It's beautiful country up there, and I still continue to hike. I've hiked the entire Mid-State Trail, which goes through the middle of Massachusetts. I think that's 90 miles or 99 miles, if I recall correctly. And I even did a northern section to this. It doesn't matter, but it was up in New Hampshire. It's an extension of the Mid-State. So it's one of the fun things I do. In motorcycling, I mentioned it before. So like this coming week, actually, Thursday through Sunday, I'm going to be doing a trip with my dad, my brother, and another gentleman up into the North Woods of Maine, just tooling around for a long weekend. It's a little surprise thing about me.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Okay, so we are done with our pre-planned questions. The last one is irrelevant to this one. It's not applicable, so we're going to skip that one. Okay, so I am going to go around the room and ask for discussion. So start with Andrew.
Well, first, there's one other question I'd like to ask, if that's okay. It's just a budget issue. I'm just curious, Chris, of your thoughts of what are your thoughts?
I missed that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Experience and thoughts on setting permitting fees, because another thing that we often in exercise we go through is, as the select board, we're working with the advisory committee. We want to keep taxes low, so one of the things to do to offset that, we're always looking for ways we can increase local revenue and making sure that our permitting fee structure is correct. Do you have experience in working to set the correct schedule of fees, updating them, things like that?
Yeah, so your permitting fees right now are $12 per thousand, if I remember correctly. Northborough was at $10 per thousand. The part that was amiss for Northborough was they have some old outstanding permit fees for very special projects, mostly in residential, that are outdated, frankly, and it was a miss with revenue. They discounted, like a roof was $25, a window project $25, and we struggled to get that changed. And I think what the town's missing is the fact that there's companies out there with very strong franchise remodeling in the windows these days. We see things in 6 figures sometimes on a whole house, and that's massive revenue. That's a miss. So that would be the kind of thing to look at. I think it's just standardized across the board, the same amount, no matter what the project is, frankly, to me, is the best way to handle something. no matter what that project is. And I haven't dived into your permitting structure, fees structure in deep detail, but if I recall correctly, it was pretty straightforward, and it was mostly at that 12. So I think you're right at that area for where it should be. And if there was any kind of specialty things that's kind of keying off based on Northborough's history, that would be something to focus in on.
Thanks.
So, good question, Andrew. To follow up on this, so you've got several people on this Zoom, Chris, that are alumni of the town finance committee, the advisory committee. And we thought it was good practice for these fees to be reviewed every year. So I would suggest that is probably a good practice going forward. We don't want, we don't want to be the highest. We want to be, fair market value for fees. We don't want people not to do projects here because of fees. We want to do projects here. We need to get more building going here, more commercial building going here. So I think that the best practice would be to look at these fees every year and make sure we're in line with our neighbors, so that the fee is not going to be a determinative factor, but that we are trying to maximize revenue, because as Andrew says, we're looking for non-tax revenue wherever we can find it. So good question. Okay, so anything else you want to say, Andrew, as far as summing this up?
No further questions.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question before we talk about whether we are ready to vote on Chris's appointment? Because that's what's coming next.
I just, it's Marguerite again. I know I'm like repeating myself, but one of the things that many other boards and committees are looking to the building inspector to do is to, I hate to say this because I know you're a collaborative person, is that sometimes you have people who are non-compliant, and would it only be to take it if you had an issue, or say somebody had, I don't know, trailers on their property long-term, would you take it directly?
Marguerite, I'm just going to interrupt. I think he's really answered that
Okay.
in depth in Sam's post. So I think we all agree that the last two building inspectors did not focus on enforcement. It's just a fact. And we do think it's important to do it the right way, but to do it. So I think we've gotten that message across to Chris this morning. We just need to keep moving here. So
Okay, I'll
you're welcome to
defer.
talk to him. If this appointment goes forward, you're welcome to talk to him certainly offline about this. But I think we've gotten the point made this morning that we do think enforcement is a very important part of his job.
All right.
Chris, do you agree?
Yeah, that message is certainly coming through. The question I'd have with that, is there any communication or engagement strategies that weren't working before, or that you guys have a sense that you'd recommend dealing with the public on a situation like that? Or is it just strictly we weren't engaging at all before in not getting involved? I don't have a problem pursuing something if we're all on the same page with that, that's for sure. But my question within the enforcement of zoning is the communication or engagement strategy that was practiced.
So we can have a separate conversation with you
Okay.
if this goes forward as far as that goes. There's one particularly troublesome situation that is being dealt with right now.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else have anything they want to ask him before we make a motion to appoint Chris as our next building inspector?
Bernie has his hand up, Kathy. I don't know.
Oh, where is Bernie? Oh,
But
sorry.
he's muted.
Right back.
But he's muted.
There he is. Sorry, Bernie. Sorry. Go ahead, Bernie.
He's muted.
Muted.
You're still muted, Bernie. Now we can even see you.
Oh,
So
now
we've lost your picture too, but that's okay.
you don't need to see me.
Right.
I just wasn't sure what your steps were going to be, if you're going to move right to a vote, or if you want to have any discussion, have Chris leave. We've done some background checks. I'd be happy to speak to you a little bit about what we've learned as a result of the background checks that might address some of the enforcement issues that you've raised as well. So
Go ahead.
that too.
Go
Well,
ahead.
basically, I will tell you that we spoke to references in a number of communities that Chris has been in, and everyone has spoken very highly of skills of Chris's technical knowledge and his ability to work with people in the town and so on. The one thing I'll tell you is that, and this is coming as a former manager, building commissioners have to walk that sort of narrow line. If they're too hard, they lose credibility within the town as being someone who's just anti everything and won't let anything happen. And there's usually political blowback that happens as a result of that. So you want to be, you know, and then at the same time, you have the building commissioners that let everything go and avoid that. And so you're always looking for that sweet spot of the way that the enforcement takes place. And what's interesting, when I talk to the references, I had one person from a community tell me that Chris is far too black and white, and is you know, doesn't really understand the shades of gray sometimes. Knowledgeable, good guy, all of that, but a little too hard. And someone else from the very same town said exactly the opposite. Great guy, very technically proficient, but you know, sometimes could push a little bit more. So it seems like that sweet spot is kind of there. And it's interesting, it was both in the same community that they spoke from. So to give the board a level of comfort, I think it really is the communication with the building commissioner, with Chris, if he is appointed, moving forward, of, you know, what we're really looking for. And as Chris noted, I do think it's a sort of developing an engagement strategy of how that's going to take place is really the way to do that. So I just wanted to throw that in.
So thank you, Bernie. I'm sorry I didn't call on you. I absolutely
right.
get what you've got to say. You've done this search for us. A couple things to add to before we vote is Gene Novak, our current acting inspector, who really wants to be part-time again, is very supportive of this appointment. I also saw Jim Caleri at the swearing in of Chief Puntini on Saturday, and he gave Chris an absolute thumbs up. So we do have some people who do this on a day-to-day basis that clearly are supportive of this appointment. Okay, anybody else want to say anything before we make a motion to appoint Chris as our next building inspector? I see nobody saying anything. Okay, so Sam, you want to make the motion, and it should be contingent on finishing all the background checks and the personnel board approving a third week of vacation on, I believe it's Monday.
Sure. So I'll move that we appoint Chris Lund, building inspector, contingent on successful background checks and SAP process of completion to success.
Second.
Mark,
Building commissioner.
building commissioner, sorry.
So amended to be building commissioner. Thank you, Mark. Okay, any further discussion before we vote? Okay, this is Zoom, so roll call vote. Andrew,
Aye.
Marguerite,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Al,
Enthusiastically, aye.
okay. And I'm an enthusiastic guy too. So 5-0 to recommend Chris as our next building commissioner.
When can you start?
July 1st, July 1st, Sam, or Al, I think,
Yeah.
right? Is that right,
Yeah.
July 1st?
July 1st is the target. I do a little activity with Gene and Kelly for a few hours with Mark's blessing, just to kind of get some stuff. But yeah, it's July 1st is the target.
Okay.
Thanks,
right,
Chris.
Congratulations,
Great.
Chris. We
Thank
will
you.
see- we hope we see you soon. And thank you, Bernie, again for another successful recruitment, I think. It looks like it.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
you.
Andrew, motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second,
Roll call vote. Andrew,
Aye.
Marguerite,
Aye.
Sam,
aye.
Al,
Aye.
Kathy's aye, 5-0. See everybody later. Good job.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Congrats, Chris.
Yep, bye-bye.
Thank you so much.